Which baby Pokemon have aged the best, and what the hell do I even mean by that? You may be thinking to yourself, Jimothy, how can a baby Pokemon age? It's literally a child. Listen to yourself, Jimothy, you sound insane. An aged child. What does that even mean? That's completely oxymoronic. No, folks, it makes sense. I am talking about the context of the Little Cup metagame in competitive Pokemon. Little Cup is a Pokemon format where you are only allowed to use Pokemon that are the first stage in their evolution line, aka baby Pokemon. And these Pokemon are locked at level 5. Today I would like to give flowers to the baby Pokemon that were released quite a long time ago that are still very good in Gen 9 Little Cup, even though there are new and powerful faces in the world of baby Pokemon gaming such as Tinkatink and Toadschool, who have really had a seismic impact on the metagame. But regardless, these old babies are still powerful and still relevant, and probably always will be. These are staples of Little Cup that have remained good throughout time. Do I sound insane? Maybe. Regardless, we must speak about the GOAT of Little Cup himself, the undisputed GOAT. It is Mienfoo. When it comes to baby Pokemon in a competitive context, Mienfoo is the gold standard. The fully evolved form of this Pokemon, Mienshao, is not that outstanding in competitive, it's alright, but Mienfoo is at the very top of the food chain. Mienfoo is just the most solid guy ever in the Little Cup format. It has everything you want. First of all, it's got Regenerator, which is an elite ability, allowing you to heal 1/3 of your max HP every single time you switch out. Most reliable form of healing in the game. Mienfoo gets a huge amount out of Eviolite with the Regenerator, as Eviolite boosts your defense and special defense. All Pokemon get access to this, but it really feels enhanced with Regenerator for the healing. You get so much more value out of your HP, and you're constantly recovering HP. Mienfoo is also a good balance of offensive and defensive. It's so great it can heal and switch in and tank things, but also it has Stab, High Jump, Kick, a 130 power physical attack that deals incredible damage. It has Knock Off, you can use to remove items. It has U-Turn for pivoting. That's what U-Turn is for, it's for pivoting. U-Turn is always such an amazing thing to have in conjunction with Regenerator, because you can attack, switch out, not only gain information for all the reasons U-Turn is already good, but then also proc Regenerator and heal yourself. For this reason, Mienfoo is the easiest Pokemon to throw into any Little Cup team. It's going to defensively answer things, dish out good damage itself, pivot, gain entry points for your teammates, remove items. It even has Fake Out for a form of priority, which is very nice to break Sturdy and other such things that are prominent in Little Cup. Mienfoo also has access to the ability Reckless, which is actually a valid option on it. Reckless is an ability that causes your attacks with recoil or crash damage to deal 1.2x more damage. You can use Reckless with High Jump Kick to massively increase its power. It's only a 20% increase, but the base power of the move is so high that the 20% increase is really felt, and Mienfoo can run a Choice Scarf with Reckless for truly absurd damage output with High Jump Kick, some of the greatest breaking power in all of Little Cup. And this is pretty much what Mienfoo has been doing since it came out in Gen 5, and that was over a decade ago. Mienfoo was elite in that format, and it's still doing the same thing in Gen 9 Little Cup. All these years later, not much has changed. It's gained a couple new options. Close Combat is a good one to maybe hedge against the High Jump Kick miss. But for the most part, this guy's just doing the same thing it's always been doing, and it's just never gone out of style. Mienfoo is the one true king of the Little Cup format, and I think it always will be. Up next we have Vullaby, and it's always a bit of a shock to people when they find out that Vullaby is one of the greatest baby Pokemon in history. With a truly excellent track record in Little Cup, it's kind of a forgotten baby Pokemon. People aren't necessarily lining up out the door to get the Vullaby plush toy or anything, but in Little Cup this guy's a superstar. And it's a pretty interesting Pokemon actually, in how it works. Vullaby is largely a defensive pivot. It has pretty nice defensive stats among babies. It gets a lot out of an Eviolite. You can switch in, you have the great Dark Flying typing, Roost, U-Turn and Defog and Knock Off and such options as that. But also, Vullaby can leverage these defensive entry points for a bit of offense with the ability Weak Armor, which, when struck by a physical attack, will grant +2 speed at the cost of -1 defense. Weak Armor is one of those abilities that somehow feels way better in Little Cup. The initiative that you get from this just feels incredible, as you've turned your defensive wall into quite a frightening threat with a pretty hard-hitting Brave Bird and Knockoff. The initiative that you get from the weak armor speed boost is incredible, and the defense debuff doesn't feel that detrimental. It's quite common, in fact, that you will force out whatever you just switched in against thanks to the speed boost that you've received. And Vullaby can also, even though it only has 45 base special attack, it can run a special attacking set with Nasty Plot to boost its special attack further, and the beautiful options of Air Slash and Heat Wave, which are pretty fantastic as a offensive combo. Heat Wave hitting various steel types, Air Slash hitting things such as Mienfu, the various fighting type. Many taps in the game for good neutral damage. Vullaby feels quite versatile. It can be more defensive leaning with Defog, Roost U-Turn. Can be very aggressive. It has the special attacking move pool. And even though 45 base special attack isn't much, Nasty Plot gets you over the line much of the time, and so does just the fact that it's Little Cup and everything's taking massive damage anyway. I find Vullaby in Little Cup to be a really interesting Pokemon. I think there's nothing like it in other formats. It's this defensive pivot that transforms into a speed-boosted, frightening threat when it switches in. I mean, there are plenty of Pokemon throughout history that combine offense and defense, but not quite like this, I think, with the whole weak armor scenario, and with Vullaby's particular tools and defensive profile. I think it's an awesome Pokemon. Pokemon like this that give Little Cup its frantic and offensive identity, and this is just the kind of thing you would never see in any other format. When this guy debuted in Gen 5, it didn't quite have all the options at its disposal. It didn't have Defog or buffed knockoff, but it could still make things happen with that weak armor combo, and as it gained those ever-valuable options over time, it quickly cemented itself as an absolute staple of Little Cup for the rest of time, and to this day, Vullaby remains top tier in Gen 9 Little Cup. Extremely commendable for a rather often forgotten bird with a skull pants on. Kind of a strange creature design that they probably didn't expect to have an impact on this niche format in the competitive singles sphere. Up next we have Elekid, who is so far the oldest of the baby Pokemon here, which is interesting because it's the only one that specifies that it's a kid in the name itself. He's just a kid, Elekid. And yet he's been around since all the way back in Gen 2. Still a top tier baby Pokemon in Gen 9 Little Cup to this day. I mean, that's unbelievable. Elekid has always stood out in Little Cup, thanks to its incredible combination of speed and offense. Elekid has the 95 base speed tier, which is faster than most other baby Pokemon. In fact, this is sort of a serviceable speed tier, even if you're a fully evolved Pokemon. Wouldn't be too bad, but among baby Pokemon, this is lightning fast. Few things are faster. Voltorb is faster, but Voltorb, while 5 speed faster, does not pack as much of a punch as Elekid. Elekid has not only this excellent speed tier of 95, but also a very good attacking move pool with physical and special attacks galore. It has the elemental punches, Volt Switch to pivot, knock off. Psychic is actually good coverage to hit all of the prominent fighting type baby Pokemon. You also have Cross Chop, which is excellent fighting coverage to hit such fellas as Pawniard. It seems that for as long as Elekid has existed, it has been the go-to fast miscellaneous attacker of Little Cup, with the best balance of offense, speed, and versatility. Elekid's ability is also not irrelevant. It has Vital Spirit, which grants an immunity to being put to sleep. Little Cup is one of the few Gen 9 formats where the sleep ban did not apply. You can still use sleep-inflicting moves in Gen 9 Little Cup to this day, and this is of course because children need their rest. It would be very immoral to ban sleep in Little Cup, and to do so would be terrible optics for Smogon, so I understand the choice to not extend that ban to Little Cup. Vital Spirit is very useful to switch in on sleep-inflicting moves. Be completely immune to them. They are, in fact, a prominent part of this format. I think it's interesting that power creep in this way is less severe and less felt in Little Cup, because Gen 9, yes, introduced a bunch of very powerful new Pokemon, but most of them are fully evolved Pokemon or legendaries. Many of the baby Pokemon introduced are good, yes, but they're not so good that they're completely usurping and overtaking the prior kings of the format. And for that reason, Elekid, despite existing all the way back in Gen 2, is still putting up incredible numbers as an A+ ranked Pokemon in Gen 9 Little Cup, yet to be dethroned by anything new or noteworthy. Up next we have Fungus, and Fungus is an absolute superstar, folks. Fungus is known globally It's one of the most celebrated Little Cup Pokemon of all time. Give a round of applause, please, to this Pokeball-shaped mushroom creature. Yes, Amoonguss is quite a good Pokemon, but Foongus in Little Cup is consistently one of the top-tier, most used Pokemon throughout the generations. This guy is a staple of the format through and through. Foongus is a Grass Poison type, a defensive typing that certainly has many upsides to it. Foongus has Regenerator as well, much like Mienfoo. And of course Foongus has Spore, one of the most sought-after moves in the game, a way to inflict sleep with 100% accuracy. This is an amazing option in the fast-paced world of Little Cup to just put a child to bed instantaneously, leveraging your defense for immediate massive value. If you think about it, this is exactly what Amoonguss has always done, being a bulky regen Pokemon with Spore, but Amoonguss has always suffered from a poor move pool up in the tiers where it's used and also pretty weak stats. Foongus, on the other hand, its stats not the best among the babies, but it's far more manageable than Amoonguss is relative to its competition in the tiers where it's used. Foongus really does just feel so much more powerful than Amoonguss ever does in any tier it exists in, especially because Foongus can actually hit fairly hard with Sludge Bomb and Giga Drain off the back of 55 special attack. It's not much special attack, but this is Little Cup. Damage is higher overall. So 55 special attack is a lot better than it sounds. Foongus in Little Cup in a way is like what Amoonguss has always dreamed of being. The flaws that Amoonguss has do not feel as devastating on Foongus, who is really quite similar to many Pokemon around it, but has these incredible elite options that should come with some massive drawback, but there isn't really much of a drawback. Foongus is just extremely good with limited downsides. Little Cup is an environment where it's hard for full-on defensive Pokemon to function properly. Chip healing is less valuable when HP values are so low, damage is higher, aggression is everywhere. That's why Mienfoo is so good, it's defensive and offensive at once. Foongus may not be as aggressive as Mienfoo is, but the sheer momentum you get from Spore and the surprisingly good damage output from your stab moves, as well as the typing and regenerator, are all just working incredibly well in favor of Foongus, a defensive Pokemon that can keep up with the fast pace of life as a level 5 individual. Up next we have Stunky. Yes, man, this is what I'm talking about. Stunky, folks. Look at the little skunk. Unbelievable. Stunky is a very good Little Cup Pokemon despite his father Skuntank not being very powerful in above tiers. Stunky, however, makes miracles happen and is considered a hero globally. Stunky has one of the strongest type combinations in all of Pokemon, the Poison Dark type combination. Few things get this. Poison Dark is an amazing complementary combo with only a single weakness to ground. One weakness this type has. It has multiple immunities, so many resistances. And its stats are more on par with its peers than Skuntank's are in the higher tiers. Stunky can actually make use of this amazing typing down in Little Cup. And for a baby, 63 attack is actually alright. That's a pretty good attack stat, especially factoring in the typing, and as is 74 speed. That's not too shabby. In earlier generations, Stunky was used for its ability to Pursuit Trap. Pursuit, a now removed move, but in the earlier generations, Stunky could abuse this to great effect. Pursuit would attack you on the way out if you chose to switch out, and this was great at eliminating Pokemon weak to Dark, such as Ghastly and Abra. Stunky has the perfect typing for such a thing, to switch in on something like Abra, for example, because it is immune to Psychic, neutral to fighting, and actually quite resilient against various things Abra is capable of, as well as having Sucker Punch if Abra dares to stay in and fight the Stunky. So Stunky was always great for that, but post Pursuit being removed from the game in Gen 8, Stunky sort of fell down a little bit, especially because it does not have Knockoff in its moveset in Gen 8, so it has to rely on Crunch. It still had its value thanks to the elite typing, and the ability Aftermath, which we haven't even mentioned yet. Aftermath is actually quite a good ability here. If your Pokemon is KO'd with a contact move, that move's user will lose 1/4 of their max HP. So if you get hit and KO'd by a contact move, you'll deal a little bit of damage to them back, which is quite nice in Little Cup, where it's pretty common that you want to deal chip damage to Break, Sturdy, and Focus Sash, and things like this. This is often relevant and fits well with the pace of Little Cup. So Stunky has that in Gen 8, it has its typing, but in Gen 9, they decided to buff Stunky significantly by finally giving it the key option of Knock Off, which was an immediate huge buff, knockoff being the ideal dark stab option and item removal. And also Stunky got fire coverage. This may not seem very thematically appropriate for a little skunk to be able to use a fire type move and burn the enemy. But this is because, of course, Stunky has a fire within his soul, which the developers have finally recognized. With the move Temper Flare, Stunky actually has incredible coverage against steel types. Temper Flare itself is an interesting move. It's a 75 power fire type attack, which is good enough on its own for coverage, but then it has the effect where power will double if the last move that you use failed. And this is actually amazing in conjunction with Gunk Shot. Gunk Shot, a very good and high power stab poison type attack that deals great damage, but of course steel is immune to poison, so steel types can come in easily. However, with Temper Flare, if a steel type does come in and is immune to Gunk Shot, you can then do a double power Temper Flare to completely destroy the steel type with a 150 power fire type coverage move. Goodness gracious. Stunky is very good here. It may not be the fastest thing around, may not be the bulkiest thing around, but the typing gives it so many beautiful ways to hit the field. It's got the priority. It's got the incredible coverage and stab knockoff, and a very powerful stab Gunk Shot too. It's resilient against common special attackers, and Stunky, in the eyes of the people, is a hero. It's just that simple. He's a hero. And his father is very proud, and he always will be. Skuntank never dreamed that his son could achieve such incredible heights, but it has happened. It's difficult to accept. It's difficult to accept that it's real, but it's true. Stunky has made history. Everybody knows it. Everyone knows it. Up next we have Chinchou, baby form of Lantern, a surprisingly consistent Pokemon in the world of Gen 9 Little Cup that is also, much like Elekid, one of the oldest Pokemon here, introduced all the way back in Generation 2. In fact, Chinchou and Elekid are very good friends. They've got a long history together, and both are still triumphant in Generation 9 Little Cup. All these years later, Chinchou is just an extremely solid pivot and special attacker. It's a water electric type Pokemon with the ability Volt Absorb, which grants electric immunity and healing if struck by an electric move. Chinchou is a Pokemon with a nice defensive type profile, good resistances, and the beautiful electric immunity that can also dish out good damage too, with a nice move pool that has Volt Switch. And I believe Elekid is actually the one who taught Chinchou how to Volt Switch in Gen 5, when Elekid learned the technique and wanted to pass it on to the old friend Chinchou. I know they're both the better for it, as Chinchou can achieve momentum with such a technique. Chinchou actually matches up well against Elekid, denying it from spamming Volt Switch too much, with the Volt Absorb totally blocking it. And Chinchou does threaten a very powerful Hydro Pump in the face of Elekid. Ice Beam is very good to be able to threaten Fungus, and the Water Electric combo is nice because if a ground type comes in to block Volt Switch, they are of course vulnerable to stab Hydro Pump. I think there's a bit of a common theme with all of these Little Cup mainstays that have remained great throughout the generations in this format, and that is good mix of offense and defense that fits well with the pace of the format. And Chinchou is the kind of Pokemon that fills beautiful defensive gaps with its electric immunity and incredible defensive typing, but also doesn't sacrifice momentum. It is not too passive. Has great stab moves that are complementary. Coverage to threaten key defensive Pokemon. Chinchou has it all. Up next, I want to give a rare shout out to Larvesta, a very under-discussed Pokemon, I think. The baby form of Volcarona. This is one where the fully evolved form is far more accomplished and famous. Volcarona is well known as the king of boost sweepers. One of the most controversial Pokemon of all time, with its ability to ramp up and win games insanely quickly thanks to Quiver Dance. Larvesta may not match the reputation of its far more accomplished parent, but Larvesta is quite unique in its own right. It is also a bug fire type, just like Volcarona is, but Larvesta in Little Cup is a physical attacker, not a special attacker. It doesn't learn Quiver Dance. It's actually a unique, bulky, physical attacking pivot. Larvesta has Flame Body, which is a great ability with a 30% chance to burn Pokemon that make contact with you. Larvesta has Morning Sun for healing, Will-O-Wisp to apply burn directly, and U-Turn to pivot. Now, there is a big problem with Larvesta, and that is the fact that as a bug fire type, you are times 4 weak to rock, therefore very vulnerable to stealth rock. So you do have to run Larvesta with a powerful rapid spinner like Gen 9's Toad School, for example. But if you can sort that out and build the team around Larvesta, it's actually a pretty excellent Pokemon here. Its attack stat is very high for Little Cup, so the damage output is actually quite impressive on this Pokemon, and also Larvesta is one of the best things to switch in against a Mienfoo. Larvesta punishes Mienfoo very well. Larvesta resists fighting, so it can easily stomach a high jump kick. It has Flame Body, so if they try to high jump kick too often, they're going to eventually burn themselves from their Larvesta entries. And also Larvesta is able to punish the usually difficult to punish option of U-turn. If Mienfoo is spamming U-turn too many times, that makes physical contact, and eventually they're going to get Flame Body burned and devastated by the halved damage output. Yet another example of a very unique option that you would never see in any other tier. The baby form of a Pokemon operating as almost the polar opposite of its fully evolved form, and doing so quite well. Larvesta's ranked B+ in Gen 9 Little Cup, which I think is pretty impressive, still valued as a nice physical check to some of the top Pokemon, Burn, Spreader, and itself not a bad physical attacker in its own right. Up next, folks, is Mudbray the Little Horse. Can we please commend Mudbray? Everybody please commend Mudbray right now. Mudbray is an A+ ranked Pokemon in Gen 9 Little Cup. Goodness, what a champion. And you may be thinking, Jimothy, how could Mudbray have aged well if it's only existed since Gen 7? Gen 7 just came out. No, it didn't. Gen 7 came out over 10 years ago now. It's been over 10 years. Mudbray has had time to age. I mean, how many years is that in horse years? Mudbray, when you factor in the horse year conversion, has seen empires rise and fall, and the shifting of the tides, and this is a Pokemon wise beyond its years as well. When you factor that in, I think that Mudbray has lived many lifetimes, in essence, and now finds its home in Gen 9 Little Cup, where it's one of the top Pokemon in the format. Mudbray is the premier bulky ground type, which is a type of Pokemon that you're going to see in every format. This is the Landorus Therian of Little Cup. A simple mono ground type does excellent work, and Mudbray has an astronomically high 100 attack stat for Little Cup. That is an incredibly high attack stat, so it also hits very hard. It has the elite ability Stamina, which grants +1 defense on hit. If struck by any attack, you will gain a defense boost. And its bulk is impressive too for a baby Pokemon. 70 HP and 70 defense. In normal circumstances would not be much to write home about, but these are children we're talking about. 70 HP is a miracle. And 70 defense, it's over the moon. Boosted by the Eviolite? It doesn't feel fair. This little horse has unimaginable power compared to its peers. Not to mention it sets Stealth Rock on the field, which is incredibly impactful in Little Cup. As less things are running heavy-duty boots, they're all running Eviolite. That's the item of choice for most, so Stealth Rock actually can feel more impactful in Gen 9 Little Cup than it does in higher tiers of Gen 9 as a result of that. This might be the biggest disparity between Little version and Big version. Mudbray is a Pokemon in Little Cup that the universe centers around. It is one of the biggest defensive Pokemon to beat. It is one of the most used Pokemon, and one of the most high-performing Pokemon. It feels a real cut above most other things in the format. Whereas Mudsdale, the larger version of Mudbray, the fully formed horse, is quite an unremarkable Pokemon in all arenas. It's very much outclassed by other similar ground-type bulky attackers that exist in various formats, never quite finding a place for itself to exist, even though it has the stamina ability, which is amazing. It just feels a bit too slow, a bit too passive for those higher tiers. Because Mudbray feels right at home here. And folks, I think it is worth discussing some very noteworthy omissions from Gen 9's baby Pokemon lineup that would almost certainly still be excellent if they were in Gen 9 and have been excellent historically. One of these being Ferroseed. This is a real like father, like son situation. I have spoken about many examples here where there is a disparity between the large form and the small form, but when it comes to Ferroseed and Ferrothorn, both are elite in their respective domains. Ferroseed, when it comes to baby Pokemon, is the king of defense. Although it is bad to be too passive in Little Cup, Ferroseed can get away with being a little bit more passive than most Pokemon here, as a result of its defenses just being so elite for the environment. There's a physical defense stat of 91 and a special defense stat of 86, which of course get boosted by Eviolite. And those stats are just incredibly high compared to everything else around it. The Grass Steel typing is one of the best type combinations in the game, with only 2 weaknesses to fire and fighting and myriad resistances. And Ferroseed, much like its father, can also utilize Iron Barbs to make up for its passive nature a little bit, dealing damage to enemies that make contact. Iron Barbs, I will say, is less impactful here than it is on Ferrothorn, because 1/8 of a Pokemon's max HP is a pretty small amount here down in Little Cup, where HP values are around 30-ish in a flat numerical value. But still, it is always useful to break Focus Ashes and Sturdies and such, and, you know, chip damage still counts. One thing that sets Ferroseed apart from its father is the fact that it can opt for Giga Drain as an option, which is interesting because its special attack is only 24. So this would seem to be a horrible option. But even with only 24 special attack, Giga Drain is at least enough to 1v1 water types with the super effective damage, and the healing is very significant here, as every single point of HP is so much more valuable on Ferroseed than it is on other Pokemon, due to its high defenses. So having some way of healing yourself is significant. You can opt instead for Bullet Seed though, if you prefer to use your higher attack stat, and that's a fair option too. But Giga Drain is actually quite common on Ferroseed, despite it having such a poor special attack stat, purely for the healing and because it's still good enough at pressuring Pokemon weak to it. And even though it's passive, it doesn't deal that much damage, and it doesn't have the pivoting that other bulky Pokemon do. At least Ferroseed has good utility in the form of knockoff, Stealth Rock, and Thunder Wave. Ponyta is not present in Generation 9 Little Cup, neither is its father Rapidash, the Flaming Horse, nowhere to be seen in Scarlet and Violet. But Ponyta is a pretty solidly high-performing Little Cup Pokemon throughout the years, and this is one that stretches back all the way to Generation 1, which is very impressive. Ponyta, straightforwardly, has very high stats for a baby Pokemon. 90 base speed is very good. It's just below the Elekid benchmark, of course, but 90 speed is faster than most, and Ponyta has a very impressive 85 attack stat, which is extremely good for Little Cup. Ponyta also has decent defenses considering how fast and threatening it is. 55 and 65? For Little Cup, that's not so bad. Now, one thing that's a bit rough about Ponyta is its move pool, as it does have to rely heavily on the recoil moves, Flare Blitz and Wild Charge, but in Little Cup it feels as if recoil moves are a bit easier to justify using. Games are faster, and dishing out damage quickly is extremely important. So overall, the high damage output of Flare Blitz far outweighs the drawback of the recoil. It feels like you're getting the better end of the deal there. It was also a significant change when in Gen 7, Ponyta was blessed with the new option of high horsepower, which of course had massive political ramifications that I could scarcely get into here with limited time on our hands, but also it's ground coverage, and it's a beautiful option for ground coverage, with a high 95 power. It does have 95% accuracy, because there's always a 5% chance that a horse feels a bit of remorse and doesn't want to attack the enemy or something, but much of the time this is going to be a very reliable attack to have in your toolkit, and one that allows you to more widely threaten things, and also a great option to click if you don't want to recoil yourself with Flare Blitz. Often high horsepower will do the trick. Ponyta even has Flame Body, so defensive entry points for it have value. Flash Fire is also a useful ability for it, for fire immunity, but most sets I've seen throughout the years tend to lean towards Flame Body as the entry points on things like Mienfoo U-Turn and other such commonly spammed contact attacks are very useful and can have a massive impact if you do get that burn proc. And folks, I would say that the most well-aged of all baby Pokemon in the series is the world-famous Abra, from all the way back in Gen 1. Abra is a staple of so many Little Cup formats, and is known often as the premier gold standard for a special attacking Pokemon in Little Cup. Abra really stands out among these babies with its monstrous special attack stat of 105. I was just talking about Ponyta having a very impressive 85 attack, But 105 is nearly up to the level of a fully evolved Pokemon. 105 special attack is very, very powerful. Abra also has 90 speed, and this was enough to make Abra a great Pokemon, even in Gen 4 Little Cup, before it got the ability Magic Guard in Gen 5. But of course, when it got the ability Magic Guard in Gen 5, its excellence rose even further, as this ability is one of the strongest in the game, granting a complete immunity to all indirect damage. This allows Abra to always preserve its focus sash and never be worried about sand or hail or hazards chipping it. It's not worried about any form of residual damage from Leech Seed or poison or anything. Magic Guard is such an excellent get for a Pokemon that was already quite powerful for a baby, and this has obviously been a top tier choice in most Little Cup formats. Abra had a bit of a tough time in Gen 8 Little Cup. It was a mixed bag for Abra, as Pursuit was finally removed from the game, which was good news as Abra was one of the things threatened by Pursuit trapping, but also Abra losing the option of Hidden Power meant that it felt a little bit weaker offensively without the ability to patch up some of its more egregious bad matchups. Abra is still very effective in Gen 8 Little Cup with its amazing Stab Psychic. It's using the option of Dazzling Gleam as well to hit dark types. But Abra started to run some interesting stuff to counteract its poor moveset here. Counter can be used to tank a hit, live with the focus sash, and then strike back if you're in a dire situation. I've even seen some Gen 8 Little Cup Abras run Focus Punch as a means with which to hit Pawniard, which is quite absurd, but with lack of hidden power fighting as an option, that would be your best bet despite having only 20 attack. But regardless of these newfound hurdles Abra had to overcome, it still found itself firmly in the A rank of Gen 8 Little Cup, just as elite as ever. One of the most impressive babies, probably in human history. Now that I'm at the end of the video, I want to say to you that if you commented and said that I'm misusing the term baby Pokemon, I say to you right now, I don't care. I don't care about that. All of these Pokemon in my eyes are mere babies, okay? You say that only like Pichu and Happiny count as a baby Pokemon, and that's a specific subset of first stage evolutions. And not all first stage evolutions are baby Pokemon, Jim. Oh, okay, let me title the video, First Stage is in an Evolution Line. That really rolls off the tongue. People know what I mean when I say baby Pokemon. It's quite self-evident, and it gets the point across that I want to get in 4 letters. A 4-letter word can carry with it such context and understanding to most. And this is the purpose of words and language, is to express ideas to others so that they are understood. I am not someone who wants to abide by arbitrary categories of Pokemon that are invented by fans to begin with. It's not as if baby Pokemon is an official category of Pokemon specified by the Pokemon Company with a hard list of all those that count as baby Pokemon. And even if it was, folks, I still wouldn't care. I would not give a damn about the official list of what a baby Pokemon is. I'll call Pokemon whatever I like to. I don't care about the official decree that Happiny is a baby Pokemon and Abra is not. Caring about that is crazy. Caring about that distinction is absolutely unbelievable. Forgive me, folks, many of you are probably thinking I'm insane right now and I'm making up people that are concerned about whether something's a baby Pokemon or not. Believe me, these people exist and I hear from them every day of my life. They're writing essays about what baby Pokemon are. They're writing essays about what counts as a Pikachu clone or a mythical. They're all over the place. I can't escape them. And when my soul leaves my body, my last regret will be that I falsely categorized Onix as a baby Pokemon, despite the fact that it's clearly a very large snake rock, and that is a ludicrous thing to say. And I will never be able to right that wrong. And I will never be able to go back and turn back time and make that right, because I've already said it, and it's already in the video. And you can't take back what you've said. You just can't. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Who's your favorite baby Pokemon? Let me know down below. I'll see you in the next one.